I call the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to recognise the Attorney General and my fellow members of the committee on what was a very serious issue, and is a very serious issue, and an example of how Parliament should work when people put their best interests of the institution they belong to, and a great tradition that they have been part of establishing to the forefront, and forget about party politics. It may be pure serendipity that there was no politics involved in this at all, which is probably why Parliament acted in a most not surprising manner, but far too infrequently seen manner. First of all, Article 9 of the Bill of Rights 1688 is an ageless beacon for our democracy, and it is often misunderstood how important that is. The right for an MP, in short, reinterpreted, to speak in Parliament openly and honestly without fear of later legal action is fundamental to sound debate and the expansion of knowledge and argument on which the parliamentarians collectively can make a decision. And there has been over the years a slow erosion of parliamentary privilege in this country in two respects. First of all, as to the public's understanding of what it means that as an MP is frequently portrayed as hiding behind parliamentary protection, when everyone knows, particularly in the press gallery, that without that parliamentary protection, not one media outlet would publish what that MP is saying. No consideration for the merit of what that MP is saying, but simply a blanket embargo because they themselves, the media, fear the cost of publication, of later lawsuit. And that's the first misunderstanding. Often a member of Parliament will say something in Parliament because that is the only way that the communication or media industry can actually broadcast without fear of lawsuit what is being said. Now, the second thing, and I want to emphasise that, far too many journalists will say to you, but you're saying it with parliamentary privilege. And my response always has been, personally, that's because you're too gutless to report it without fear of being sued. You have all the resources, you're backed by millions, and you're putting that up as some sort of act of temerity or even cowardice, when it in fact is a protection of you as well. And then if you trace back the recent history of this country, how often has that allegation been made when in fact at the end of the day the MP has been proven to have been reserved in the extreme about the allegations they made. Now, the second thing is the courts have taken the view that their arena, and it's been a slow erosion, is the appropriate place where an MP can fairly defend him or herself for something said in Parliament, such as the connectedness of a statement. Parliamentary speech first, the MP's asked about what happened in Parliament, and he has merely said words to this effect: well, you've heard him and you've heard me. Make up your own mind. That's been as thin a connection or link for a court to seek to hear an action which they should not have been hearing in the first place. And it's an affront to parliamentary privilege, in my view. It also invites the use of a gagging writ to shut down further disclosure. And have there been some serious examples of that in recent time? Every one of them has failed, excepting one. And that one, or rather there was two, but that one went on appeal to the High Court and got half turned over. And I'm frequently met by law students all around this country saying, well, why didn't you go the whole way? Which is a marvellous question to ask someone when that person is financing the whole action from his own resources after paying tax all himself. It's quite a shocking thing to hear that, because of course one would have loved to have gone the whole way to clarify the law, and that is what I'd like to say to the judiciary, and as clear as daylight the message is this: yes, you sit there with all the resources of the taxpayer at no expense on this matter whatsoever. You're hearing before you an MP who's funding it all by himself or with the support of like-minded people in the community. And there are good examples of this. Nick Smith had a legal fund with respect to a defamation case he was facing that emanated out of the top of the South Island. John Banks similarly had a legal fund that emanated from, I think, a truth case against the Truth magazine, which I think he was involved. Now, the extraordinary thing about that, of course, is I had one as well. That became a fund which, in law, I was told by this Parliament I could not have. And that was the kangaroo court of the Privileges Committee, the august committee that got it right this time, but it got it wrong back then. Now, we all know how hypocrisy works, but all I'm saying is, to the court and to the members of the judiciary who think that we're wrong, so who is funding the MP to defend something that he or she has properly put to the Parliament of the country? And the answer is no one. So they, that is the judiciary, are not in the shoes of someone who sits here with 100-year-old protection emanating from the UK, and thank heavens for that. And I will also say to my colleagues who have heard this argument before, and they heard it during the Privileges Committee inquiry back in 2008, do you understand the risk you take when you go down that path of denying an MP to obtain, not for political reasons, there are no votes in it, the right to start a fund to defend him or herself, and frequently up against the very wealthy, the extraordinarily wealthy? If you, as an MP, have ever faced millions and millions of dollars of defamation writs from some of the wealthiest people in the country, then you might know what I mean. But I'm sad to say that back then they decided to restrain and curb their rights to fight such defences, and I believe they acted in the most inappropriate way. The great thing about this committee and this report is that I think there is a view across the committee that we need to correct this erosion and return and restore the situation to what it should be legally. And we commend this to the balance of Parliament, not on the basis of some venal self-interest, but on something far more important by way of principle. The right of an MP, whether wrong or right, but the right of an MP to honestly state his or her view in the hope that that adds to the public debate and the quality of decision-making in Parliament. That's an important right, and I want to thank the Attorney-General for chairing the committee in an extraordinarily competent way. Thank you.
Speaker.
I call the honourable member Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honoured to take a call on this very important report, and I'd like to acknowledge the work of both